Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana, and I am so excited to be celebrating 10 years of meaningful conversations with you. As we step into our new primetime hour, it's such an honor to share this exciting new chapter with you. So whether you're starting your day out, headed to work, or listening from wherever you are, this hour is designed to bring you thoughtful dialogue, fresh insight, and inspiring stories so you can make every moment count. So thank you for being here with me today, and let's dive in. 10 years ago this month, Congress passed bipartisan reforms to the Toxic Substances Control Act, the nation's primary chemical safety law designed to help protect Americans from toxic chemicals found in everyday products, workplaces, and the environment. Now, as members of Congress consider possible changes to the law, advocates warn that some proposals might weaken protections and hinder the EPA's ability to regulate chemicals linked to serious health risk. So what should Americans know about this law? Joining us is Sarah Vogel, Senior Vice President for Healthy Communities at the Environmental Defense Fund, and Phillip Williams, Yurok Tribal Council member and Army veteran, for whom this hits especially close to home. So welcome to the show, Sarah Vogel and Phillip Williams.
Thank you for having us.
Well, what an honor it is to have the both of you here. And Sarah, why don't we start with you? What is the Toxic Substance Control Act, and why does it matter for us here in California?
Yes, so the Toxic Substances Control Act is the nation's bedrock chemical safety law. It's designed to protect the public and the environment from toxic chemicals that can be found in a wide array of products in our homes. Think laundry detergents and toys and electronics, our workplaces, and they can end up contaminating the air and water and the soil in communities across this country, including in California. There are about 112 facilities across California producing chemicals that are regulated under this law, including dangerous chemicals like the PFAS compounds that are contaminating about 19 million folks drinking water across the state. But the law has been strengthened 10 years ago. It's been working to get some dangerous chemicals off the market, like methylene chloride and asbestos and TSCA, a hazardous solvent. But today, despite the widespread support of this law and really mounting evidence of the health harms from toxic chemicals, there is a concerted effort in Congress to weaken the law.
I don't think any of us like hearing that. And Phillip, this is really personal for you. Can you tell us why?
This is extremely personal for myself, a member of the Yurok tribe. We've took down the dams on the Klamath River to propagate more fish, to increase their environment. But over the years of colonization, through logging practices, gold mining, and overfishing, the Yurok tribe, we're trying to restore our land from all of that. And so there's been so many unregulated, especially the logging practices, the chemicals that they use, the diesels, the lubricants, all that falls into our ground and then leaks into our watershed and pollutes our fish. And the fish are the keystone species of our tribe. The Yurok tribe has inherited these problems. The land just returned to us over the last 30 years. And so now we are focused on restoring the land as best we can back to the way it was before colonization. We have scientists, we have biologists, we have teams and teams of experts that are helping us, create a new environment. And this Toxic Substance Chemical Act, it really needs to be strengthened because some of these acts, they don't really reach native lands. We're so rural, and in where we're at, some of these industries take advantage of the fact that we're rural.
That's just heartbreaking to hear what is going on at the Klamath River, and I'm sure among many other rivers across California. What kind of chemicals are we talking about in everyday products and who's at the greatest risk?
Yeah, so I'll try to bring it home for a lot of folks and also connect it to what's happening in with the fish and that Philip was talking about. So there's a class of chemicals called the PFAS compounds. These are actually hundreds of chemicals, huge class. They're used for their water and grease and really heat resistance. So they're added to everything from nonstick cookware, stain resistant carpets, and fabrics. They're used for firefighting foam. Um, but they're often called the forever chemicals, and that's because they just do not break down in the environment. And when a chemical does not break down in the environment, it can accumulate. It can accumulate in our bodies, in the bodies of wildlife. It can accumulate in the environment and it can move around the environment. It can get into the air, it can get into the water, it can get into the soil. And a number of the chemicals within this class that have been studied the most have been associated with a number of, harmful health outcomes, including cancers, immune suppression, neurodevelopmental, and behavioral disorders. And the PFAS, again, because they are so widespread in use and so hard to break down, are showing up everywhere. They're actually at levels of concern in the drinking water of about 19 million Californians. So many people are very concerned about these compounds, and they do fall under the regulations of the Toxic Substances Control Act. We're most concerned about those individuals who would be most vulnerable to exposure, whether it's a PFAS or endocrine disrupting chemicals like phthalates. So that's children, infants and children, pregnant women, workers who are going to be exposed to a lot of chemicals, and communities who live at the fence line of chemical production facilities or waste dumps, right, where their exposure is going to be much higher to many different chemicals, not just one at a time. And the TSCA law is designed to consider those vulnerable populations when it's evaluating the safety of chemicals.
So, Philip, how have concerns about toxic chemical exposure affected communities along the Klamath River?
Well, one of the biggest fights that we have is the timber industries is they basically own half of our land. But because of the blurred lines of jurisdiction, we have pesticide ordinances, we have chemical ordinances, but a lot of times these corporations don't really want to follow our laws. And so we really need this to help strengthen them, because without oversight on them, our fish, and I also want to bring up our California Condor reintroduction. We've watched our California condors disappear from our ancestral territory. And so we brought a program, we brought them back. And so we've enacted, lead ban on our reservation. But we feel a lot of times that we have cancer clusters here on the reservation. We have higher rates of cancer here. We've had pesticides being sprayed on us near our homes, near our schools back in the 70s. So all of us have lived through that. I've lost people, family members, colleagues to cancer. And one of the things that we're trying to do at the Yurok Tribal Reservation right now is we're going back and we're sampling all the old wells that have been decommissioned to see what the impacts are, because so many of our people have died, I feel, unnecessarily due to chemicals. And there was a time before when this act, it was free for all over here on the reservation. Like I said, all the diesel, all the oils were just spilled out into our land without any regard for the environment. And now also we have epidemic of illegal dumping, because of jurisdictional lines, now non-tribal people are bringing their trash, their waste, their cars, their dryers, their washers onto our reservation because there's no jurisdiction. Now we're being inundated with that. And so it's really important that we suppress as much of this chemical exposure on our reservation as possible. And it's basically, regulation really needs to reach here. We need some teeth to help regulate these industries.
And so to dovetail with that, Sarah, how does the EPA review and regulate toxic chemicals?
Yeah, so 10 years ago, Congress worked pretty hard to actually update this law with broad bipartisan support. And it gave EPA authorities that it didn't have before. And that included basically the authority to review the chemical safety of really thousands of chemicals that are on the market and determine whether what's called an unreasonable risk exists. And if so, to put restrictions on use to a total ban on a chemical. They were also mandated to review when new chemicals come onto the market. There's hundreds of new chemicals that come onto the market every day. And prior to 2016, there was very little review of the safety of those chemicals. So the law now mandates that the EPA determine whether there's unreasonable risk, and if there is, to put restrictions to protect the public's health. And when they are evaluating that risk, they are to consider those of us who may be most at risk: children, workers, communities overly burdened by chemicals, as we've just been hearing from Phillip, communities that live along the fence line of these chemical producers. So they have to consider that when they're trying to determine, is there a risk that we need to control? So those were significant changes in the law, and since that time, the agency has been reviewing a number of chemicals and have begun to issue restrictions.
So how could the proposed changes weaken current chemical safety protections?
Yeah, the proposals that we have seen, I'll point to three kind of areas that are most unsettling. The first is that it would make it nearly impossible for the agency to take action because it sets this impossible to meet standard of determining whether there's a risk. That's a way tactic that's been used in the past to avoid regulating chemicals. The second area is that it takes away the mandate to consider those who are most at risk. And when you do that and you sort of narrow how you're evaluating a chemical, you leave just thousands, if not millions, of people unprotected. And finally, it provides really a rubber stamp process for how new chemicals come onto the market. Since 2016, the EPA, has done a better job in reviewing the chemical safety of new chemicals, and there's real effort to take that authority away.
So where can people go to learn more information and to get involved?
So my organization has a lot of information and resources for folks to dig into. You can go to edf.org/TSCA. You can learn about the law, you can learn about chemicals and their impacts, and of course, dig in as far as you want to go, find out how you can get involved, share your stories. We've been really bringing the stories of people across the country, like Phillip, who know this issue really well from the ground and what it means to have the failure of this law. We know it's an issue that most Americans believe that the government should be protecting them from toxic chemicals. So we welcome everybody to join us in this fight.
Oh, without a doubt. Well, Sarah and Phillip, thank you both so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you.
Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.